today we will begin chapter 7 of Canto 1.
That is when Kashipu happened.
Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjanasalakaya Chaksuronmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhistam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupaha Kadamahyam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yutapadakamalam Sri Gurun Vaishnavanscha Sri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathan Vitam Tvam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Sri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padana Sahagana Lalita Sri Visakhanvitanscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Deenabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Namo Mahavadanyaya Krishna Prema Pradayate Krishnaya Krishna Chaitanya Namne Gauratu Se Namaha Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Krupa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnupadaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhaktivedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Paschatya Deshatarine Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhara Sri Vasadi Gaur Bhaktavrinda. Everybody, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, everybody. Please welcome to our Shrimad Bhagwatam story class. So today, before we will begin chapter 7, I will give you a brief summary of chapter 6. Okay, what we have learned in chapter 6. So in the chapter 6, beginning of the chapter, Vyasadeva inquires about Narada's life. See, in the previous chapter, Narad started telling his past life as a son of a maid servant, and he heard Bhagavad Katha and he got an opportunity to serve great sages because his mother was serving, so he got also an opportunity. One day he happened to eat prasadam, remnants from the great sages. So he was describing that he was really enlivened. He was very happy. And he realized that he is not this body, he is soul. So this is, we should realize that we are not this body, we are soul. So he narrowed at that age, after eating prasadam, he realized that. So that chapter ends with that. So Vyasadeva now very inquisitive to know more about Narada's previous life. So the chapter 7 begins with Vyasadeva's inquiry about Narada's previous life. what did he inquire? He said to Narada that what did Narada do after the departure of the great sages? So we asked a very nice question. He say, when the great sages left, then what did you do? Then he asked another question. How did you pass your life after initiation? And how did you attain this spiritual body that I see now? You know, Vyasadeva was seeing his current life as a Vyasadeva spiritual body. So he said, in the previous life, you were son of a maid servant. So how did you got this spiritual life? And on top of it, how do you remember your past life? Because nobody remembers their past life, right? So these are the inquiries by Vyasadeva to Narad Muni. So Narad Muni replies then, he said, he continued that I was the only son of my mother, okay, and thus being her only shelter, she bound me with the tie of affection. So now in the house, only the boy and a mother, so they were both attached to each other. So Narad Muni expressed that thing. I was only son of my mother, and she was dependent on me. I was also dependent on her. So we were attached to each other, you know. So, and he said that I was also completely dependent on her. Actually, she wanted to maintain me, properly, but she cannot because of the poor condition. She could not maintain me properly, although she wanted to. And he says that I was only a 5-year-old boy at that time, and I joined the Brahmana school there, you know. So that was his history that I was telling. But then he's saying that at one night, what happened? My mother went to milk a cow, and at that time, she was bitten by a snake and she died. So now that was the only shelter for Narad, and he lost her, his mother. So because Narad got some enlivenment, or he realized himself that he is not this body but the soul. So that is why he took this incident of death of his mother as the special mercy of Lord Krishna. You know? And then he thought that now let me go for a search for Krishna, because he was hearing Krishna Katha from those great sages in their association, and he heard all about the Lord's pastimes, Nam, Roop, Gun, Lila. How is Lord so beautiful, how his qualities are, his good pastimes in Vrindavan, Mathura, and Dwarka, everywhere. So he was very attracted. He realized himself who he is, So that is why he did not take that incident as so seriously, but accepted as Krishna's mercy, whatever happened. And then he started traveling in north direction. Why people go in north direction? You see that Himalayas. In the end of Dwapar Yuga, all the Pandavas also, to leave their body, they went to Himalayas like that. So you can see Narad Muni aim was to find Krishna, and at the end he said, anyway, if I don't find Krishna, my life will get ended. But he was not attached to any material enjoyment. He just wanted to look for a Krishna. So that's why he started his journey towards north. So now here Narad's journey is described also very well, that he passed through so many town, village, forest. We learned that thing. We did that thing last week. And Then what happened? He passed through varieties of places and experienced the God's creation. And when he got tired physically and mentally, he took bath in a lake and drank some water because he was thirsty also. And when he get in touch with water, he get really fresh. Then he sat down underneath a banyan tree and began meditation on the super soul as he learned from those great sages. He started meditation on super soul not based on whimsical way or any other way or his own way. He started meditation on the super soul based on what he has learned from those great sages while he was in their association. So by doing that, after some time, he developed a bhava stage. Bhava stage means just before the prema, pure love of God, he got that stage. So you get asta sattvic vikar, means in your body you feel these changes. Sometimes you get cry, sometimes you get perspiration, sometimes you act differently. So these are asta sattvic vikar. And Narad experienced that thing while he was in meditation. And when he experienced that thing, then Krishna appeared in his heart. Okay. And he was very much excited and blissful because he got a darshan of Lord Krishna. Why? Because he meditated on the super soul according to what he learned from the great sages. That is very important. You have to learn the art of meditation from the great Mahatmas, not from a yogi people who does these bodily exercises. You have to have a proper knowledge for doing meditation on the super soul to achieve the Krishna, and but then what happened after some time, all of a sudden Krishna became very because when Krishna, he was seeing Krishna face to face, but when Krishna disappeared, he dissatisfied. So he made another attempt, second attempt to see the Lord. Okay, but he could not, he failed. So instead, he heard the Lord's voice from the sky. And Lord said to him, what did he say? You will not see me anymore in this life, Narada, because he was not Narada at that time. He was a boy of Metsaran. But because you have a material desire and you are incomplete in your devotional service, so you will not see me anymore in this life. I showed you myself once just to increase your desire for me. So it's just like a temptation, he gave that thing. So then afterwards, Narad thought that whatever may be, so be it. Then Narad repeatedly chanted the Lord's holy name and fame until his death. And after quitting the material body, he received a spiritual body. Then as a liberated spaceman, he traveled unrestrictedly, both in spiritual and material world. He traveled constantly singing Harikatha and playing on his veena, which was gifted by Lord Krishna himself, And then Narad concludes the chapter giving the conclusive instruction to Vyasdev. He says, Narad told Vyasdev that Harikatha is the most suitable boat to cross the material ocean for those who are full of anxieties, those who are having miseries in this material world. This Harikatha, Krishna Katha, is a very suitable boat to cross over this material ocean of miseries, he said. Therefore, you write about the glories of Shrimad Bhagwatam, the glories of Lord Sri Krishna, describe his glorification about his name, his beauty, his qualities, and his pastimes, And after saying that thing, he departed, vibrating his veena to wander freely at his will. So this is the end of chapter 6. Now in the beginning of chapter 7, we'll see the Vyasdev. So I will share the screen with you. Okay, Mataji, can you make me share the screen, please? Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Yeah, can I share the screen, please?
Yes, Prabhuji. Yes, Prabhu.
Okay, so I'm gonna share the slideshow for this chapter 7. Okay, it's here, right here. All right, so we'll begin with this here. So chapter 7 begins with Vyasadeva's vision and glories of Shrimad Bhagwatam, okay, in a few verses. So as you know that Saunak Muni is asking questions to Suta Goswami, that is how we started our Srimad Bhagavatam. So now Saunak Rishi inquires about Srila Vyasadeva's activity after Narad's departure. Okay, we see that last chapter 6, Narad departed after giving instruction to Vyasadeva. So now Saunaka wants to know the further story about Vyasadeva's activities. What did he do after Narad leaves? So in reply, Suta Goswami describes Vyasadeva's ashram. As you can see, his ashram here, which was located on the western bank of Saraswati River. It is in there, and it is surrounded by berry trees. Okay, so when you see the next slide, you see this ashram. All you can see that Vyasadeva is sitting there, but in this first slide, Srila Vyasadeva in his own ashram, which was surrounded by berry trees, sat down to meditate after touching water for purification. Okay, it is very necessary to touch the water for purification. Thus, he fixed his mind perfectly, engaging it by linking it in devotional service, bhakti yoga, without any tinge of materialism. And thus, he saw the absolute personality of a Godhead along with his external energy, which was under full control. Okay, so in reply, Sudha Goswami describes Vyasadeva's ashram, as we have seen that thing, which is located on the bank of the Saraswati River. Vyasadeva performed ashman. He's connected his mind as per the direction of his spiritual master Narad Muni, and he connected his mind with devotional service, bhakti yogena manasi, without any tinge of materialism. And what happened as a result? He saw the absolute personality of a Godhead along with the external energy, which was under full control. You can see that he has a vision of Krishna here. At the same time, a material energy behind it. So what is the reflection from this incident? This proves that perfect vision of the absolute truth is possible only by linking process of devotional service, which is confirmed in Bhagavad Gita also. The absolute is mentioned here as the Purush or person. You can say Lord Krishna in a person form. The Supreme Person has unlimited energies, but there are three specific energies: external energy, internal energy, and marginal energy. So external energy, with the help of external energy, Lord creates this material world. With the help of internal energy, he creates the spiritual world, or he maintains the spiritual world rather. And marginal energy, that is, we all jivas, conditioned souls, are under marginal conditions. So Vyasadeva also understood that due to the external energies influence, materialistic living beings are suffering. And Srimad Bhagwatam is the only remedy for suffering living being in this material world. Therefore, Vyasadeva, first of all, he is diagnosed the actual disease of the conditioned soul. What was that? And that disease is living being are illusioned by the external energy of Krishna. So even though the Lord and the living entity are qualitatively one, like Sat, Chit and Anand, eternality, full of knowledge and blissful condition. Lord is same way, we are also same way, but we are conditioned. The Lord is the controller of the external energy. So whereas the living entity is controlled by illusion, that is the difference. Lord controller of the external energy, while we are controlled by external energy because we are conditioned. So the material miseries of the living entity can be directly removed by the linking process of devotional service. But the majority of the people do not know this thing, right? And therefore, Srila Vyasadeva compiled Shrimad Bhagwatam as per instruction of his spiritual master, Narad Muni, which is in relation to the supreme absolute truth, which is Krishna. Simply by giving oral receptions means hearing. Oral reception means hearing. Simply by hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, the feelings for loving devotion, service to Lord Krishna sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. That is what is described in this slide. You can see that he saw Krishna as control of all material world. Simply by giving oral reception to this Vedic literature, the feeling for loving devotional service to the Lord Krishna, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, sprouts up at once to extinguish the fire of lamentation, illusion, and fearfulness. Okay, so you can see Srimad Bhagavatam is actually a great transcendental science which begins with the process of hearing and chanting the name. You can see there are 9 types of devotional service in this slide. So when you perform that thing, okay, then you will really get a love of God. Sravanam, you can see in the first box here, these Parikshit Maharaj is hearing, Sukdev Goswami is chanting. Then Kirtanam next, and then Smaranam. And then you can see, okay, I think I have to, okay, let me see if I can minimize this thing. Okay, now I can go. Okay, so you see Sravanam, Kirtanam, Smaranam, and then Pad Sevanam. Lakshmi is massaging the feet of Lord Vishnu there, who is sitting on the serpent bed there. And then Archanam, Vandanam, Dasyam, Sakhyam, and Atmanivedanam. These are the 9-fold devotional service. So when you perform this devotional service, the Lord is fully satisfied with the sincere effort of the devotee, and then he may give an opportunity to serve him. So like in our body, we possess 10 senses, right? There are 10 senses in our body, 5 working senses and 5 knowledge acquiring senses. We get knowledge from ear by hearing, we get knowledge by eyes seeing, we get some knowledge by smelling with nose, like that. We can use our hands to pick up something, we can move with the help of the legs. So these are the some senses, a total 10 senses in our body, okay? But out of which the ear is most effective. This sense works even when man is deep asleep. So Sravanam, you can see in this slide also describe the first quality. It is very important. hearing process. Therefore, the importance of hearing is mentioned here in connection with attaining the highest perfection of life, and suggested that simply by hearing the message of Shrimad Bhagwatam, one gets attachment for the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna, and the symptoms of the material disease will disappear. Means whatever we have, the material disease, material miseries, that will go away. So by hearing the subject matter of Srimad Bhagavatam, the false complexity of materialism, means we have so many problems in material life, right? That will go away, it will be removed. Okay. So the conclusion is that simply by hearing this Vedic literature, Srimad Bhagavatam, one can have direct connection with the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, and then one can attain the highest perfection life by transcending, means crossing all over worldly or material miseries, illusion, and fearfulness. So this is the answer to the question that earlier in 4th chapter Saunak Muni asked regarding the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. So up until chapter 4, 5, 6 and this part of 7, up until this point, we knew how the Srimad Bhagavatam is came about, the history of Srimad Bhagavatam. Okay, so that is concluded here by Sutta Goswami to Saunaka Rishi. Now, another episode is coming where you see that Vyasadeva, after compiling Srimad Bhagavatam, he's teaching it to Sukadeva Goswami. Okay, so you can see after compiling the Vedas and summarizing their conclusion in the Vedanta Sutra, Srila Vyasadeva experienced his revelation about the absolute truth and then wrote and revised Srimad Bhagavatam. He then taught the Srimad Bhagavatam to Sukadeva Goswami. As you can see, that blue color boy, he is Sukadeva Goswami, okay, with all other disciples of Vyasadeva. This Sukadeva Goswami was an extraordinary personality and a liberated soul from the very beginning of his birth. So Saunak Rishi was surprised when he knew about this thing from Sutta Goswami, that Sukadeva Goswami was already a self-satisfied, he called Atmaram. You know, he's a self-satisfied person. He doesn't need anything. Who was pleased with his own self. So why did he take trouble to undergo the study of such a vast literature? So we will talk about that also. So here the past incident is, although Vyasadeva had wanted his son to hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Sukadeva left home immediately after birth without performing any purificatory or reformatory ceremony. Normally, Vedic way is that there is a purificatory processes. When the child borns, there is a process. After some months, when he start eating, then unprasan, you know, like then there is a name giving ceremony. Then there is a Janoi ceremony. So there are so many ceremonies during the life of our time from birth to date, you know. So without performing any purificatory ceremony, because he was Brahmana, he was himself, you know, Atmaram. He left home, and even though his father was going behind him to get him back, but he did not come, you know. So finally Vyas decided to send his disciple, you know, with 2 very nice Srimad Bhagavatam verses. He said, you go and sing where Sukadeva Goswami is. So that he was, he had a confidence that when Sukadeva Goswami hear these verses, you know, he will come back. So those disciples went to the forest where Sukdev Goswami was roaming around. And this verse, that two verses of Srimad Bhagavatam, these are very important. One of them is describes Krishna's compassion, and the other one describes Krishna's beauty. So I will tell you about little bit about the one which is very compassionate. Lord Krishna is so compassionate that he accepted the motherhood of Putana. That Putana, sea demon, came to kill Krishna by applying poison to her breast. And on the pretext of feeding Krishna, she wanted to kill Krishna. But instead, Krishna gave her mother's possession. So compassionate. So that is what it is described in the Bhagavatam. The second verse describes about the beauty of the Lord Krishna when he goes to herd the cows. When he entered the forest of Vrindavan, the description is given that he was wearing a peacock feather on his head. He got a karnikar flower on his ear. He wearing yellow dhoti, brilliant like gold. He was wearing Vaijanti Mala garland, and he was playing the flute. And in that way, he entered the forest of Vrindavan, beautifying it with the marks of his footprint. And he filled the holes of his flute with the nectar of his lips. And cowherd boys sang his glories, So gopis always remember this incident and that beauty. So when Sukdev Goswami heard these two verses, he was very pleased. And then he asked those disciples of Vyasadeva that, where did you hear these slokas from? So they told that, our spiritual master. Then Sukdev Goswami said, who is your spiritual master? Then they said, Vyasadeva. Then he thought, Vyasadeva is my father. So he came back, and that is how he's listening here, Srimad Bhagavatam from his father. So later on, he will tell it to Parikshit Maharaj. Okay. So this is the story behind it. So then Sutta explains that even the liberated soul desire to render unalloyed devotional service unto the personality of Godhead, because the Lord possesses transcendental qualities. I just described a few of them here, but he got so many qualities, and because of that, even those Atmaram, means one who are satisfied with their mind, they also get attracted, So by his personal feature and unlimited transcendental quality, Lord attracts all psychological activities of the pure devotee. Such is the attractive power of Lord Krishna. The attraction is so powerful that a pure devotee never hankers for any other material desire or any other thing, Another example of four Kumaras. Remember, we learned about the first incarnation from Brahma is Lord four Kumaras. So, who became devotee after smelling the aroma coming out of the tulsi leaves, which were anointed with chandan and the sandalwood paste, which were offered to lotus feet of Vishnu. So this is how even the self-realized people also get attracted to Krishna by his quality, and therefore they get a pure devotee of Krishna. So now further we will see the incident where Kurukshetra war ending is given, and it is said that the Mahabharata ends from that point. Srimad Bhagavatam starts like that. So this point is coming now. Actually, in chapter 4, Saunak asked about Maharaj Parikshit birth and life, because that story would lead to the retelling of how the Bhagavatam came to be spoken. So in reply, Suta said, now I shall begin the transcendental narration of the Lord Sri Krishna and topics of birth, activities and deliverance of King Parikshit, the sage among the king, as well as the topics of renunciation of the worldly order by the sons of Pandu. So Suta further describes that at the end of the Kurukshetra war, which you can see here, Aswathama killed the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi to please Duryodhan, who was lying with his thigh broken. However, Duryodhan disapproved of this heinous act and was not at all pleased. Draupadi cried in distress with tears in her eyes. So Arjuna spoke to pacify her. Okay. After beheading that Brahmana, I mean whoever killed that his sons, I will wipe your tears. Then after burning your sons' bodies, you can take your bath standing on his head, means Aswathama's head. So we can see here when the respective warrior of the both camp, namely Kaurava and Pandavas, were killed on the battlefield of Kurukshetra, and the dead warrior obtained their deserved destination, and when the son of Dhritarashtra fell down, lamenting, his spine broken, being bitten by the club of Bhimsen. So here Aswathama killing Pandava's 5 sons is shown. The son of Dronacharya, Aswathama, beheaded the 5 sleeping sons of Draupadi and delivered the heads as to prize to his master, foolishly thinking that he would be pleased. So that is the Aswathama's heinous act of killing the children of Draupadi. They were sleeping, So we can see from here that the transcendental topics of the activities of Lord Sri Krishna in Shrimad Bhagwatam begin from the end of the battle of Kurukshetra, where the Lord himself spoke about himself in the Bhagavad Gita. Therefore, both the Bhagavad Gita and Shrimad Bhagavatam are transcendental topics of Lord Krishna. The Gita is Krishna Katha or topics of Krishna because it is spoken by the Lord, and the Shrimad Bhagavatam is also Krishna Katha because it is spoken about the Lord. So Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu wanted everyone to be informed of both Krishna Kathas. Lord Chaitanya Mahaprabhu desired that all who are born in India seriously understand such Krishna Kathas, and then after full realization preach the transcendental message to everyone in all parts of the world, which will bring peace and prosperity. So now here we will see, after this killing of Krishna, Arjuna captures the Aswathama. After he's saying, you can see here that Draupadi grieving her son's death. Right? Draupadi, the mother of the 5 children of the Pandavas, after hearing of the massacre of her son, began to cry in distress with eyes full of tears, trying to pacify her in her great loss. So at that time, Arjuna also pacified his wife Draupadi, saying that, okay, I will bring the head of that killer, Aswathama. And then when I bring that thing, I will wipe your tears. And after burning the dead bodies of your son, you can take your bath standing on his head, like that. So that is how Arjuna, and then what did Arjuna did, you will see it in this slide here, that after satisfying Draupadi, Arjuna dressed in armor and armed himself with furious weapon, guided by Krishna as his charioteer, set out to chase Aswathama. You can see here Krishna is the chariot driver. Arjun is sitting on the chariot. Arjun, who is guided by the infallible Lord as friend and driver, thus satisfied the dear lady by such statement. Then he dressed in armor and armed himself with furious weapons, and getting into the chariot, he set out to follow Aswathama, the son of his material teacher, Dronacharya. His teacher, and Aswathama was the son of Dronacharya. So we will see that here. So Aswathama, now what happened when he saw this thing from a distance, that we will see in the next slide. Aswathama, seeing from a great distance Arjuna coming at him with great speed, fled in the chariot just to save his life. So when Aswathama saw that his horses were tired and he considered there was no alternative for protection except using the ultimate weapon. And that ultimate weapon is Brahmastra, compared to, not exactly, but almost similar to nuclear weapon nowadays, what we call, Brahmastra. But actually Brahmastra is working on the mantra, Vedic mantra base, which we will see later also. So that is the difference between Brahmastra and nuclear weapon, but just to give a comparison. So what Aswathama did to save his life, because he knew Krishna is following me, Krishna is chasing him. So to save his life, he touched water for purification and concentrated upon the chanting of the mantra for throwing nuclear weapon, this Brahmastra it is called. Although he did not know how to withdraw it back, that was his defect. He can throw it, but he cannot withdraw it. So such weapon, so when Aswathama threw the Brahmastra, a glaring light, you can see that spread in all directions. It was so dangerous that Arjun thought his own life is in danger. When Arjun saw this Aswathama, release this Brahmastra, and there was a glaring light, Arjuna was also became fearful. So he began to address Lord Sri Krishna, So what he's trying to say, Lord Krishna, which we will see next week, because after seeing this glaring effulgence of Brahmastra, which was released from Aswathama, because he wanted to save his life, but he could not understand either here. So then Arjuna started praying Krishna for the help. Krishna was with him in his chariot anyway, and tomorrow we will hear about his prayer to Lord Krishna and what kind of direction Krishna giving to Arjuna. Okay, so we will end here, and you can ask any questions or comments. Hare Krishna.